in this second part of an overview on our introduction to teacher quality, I want to talk about how policymakers typically think about it. Policymakers think about what are the instruments and tools that I have to affect the quality of my teachers. How do I recruit teachers? How do I prepare them? How do I evaluate them? How do I motivate them? What are the legal instruments and policies and programs that can give me high teacher quality? And one way to think about that is to think about what what you call the supply chain for the production of quality teachers, how it works in high-performing countries and countries with some of the best education outcomes in the world. You know, Finland, Korea, Japan, Shanghai, Singapore, Estonia. And we typically see a couple of things. First, very high selectivity at the very first point of selection into teacher training. It's very hard to get into teacher training schools in these countries. In Japan, only 15% of graduate applicants get in. In Finland, only 1/5. And in these countries, the applicants to teacher training are from the top of the high school academic distribution. Second, these highly selective applicants go into top quality teacher training schools. The schools are academically rigorous. There's a lot of focus on classroom practice. In Cuba, a large part of the curriculum is actually working in schools. And in Finland as well, every teacher training school is co-located with a functioning primary school or preschool. And the teachers spend a lot of their time actually practice teaching, observing master teachers, and doing research on school outcomes. After this rigorous training, there's another highly selective step, which is actually getting hired into the school system and into schools. In Japan, even though there was high selectivity into teacher training, there's still only 30% of teachers, graduates, get hired into schools. And the selection process often includes, as in Finland, interviews and demonstration classes. So all along this pipeline so far, there's a focus on quality, academically high caliber applicants having to compete for scarce positions. Fourth, there's a lot of induction support for new teachers, even with all of the effort to produce very well prepared new teachers. These systems recognize that every new teacher needs support and has the potential to improve quite a lot in their first couple of years. And a lot of this is actually being observed by master teachers in the classroom, having teachers work together, and be mentored and coached throughout those critical first few years of teaching. Fifth, school leadership. School leaders are carefully trained to be school managers. It's a career stream in Singapore and many other countries, and they're prepared as they're carefully selected for managerial qualities, and they're mentored themselves and guided through their tenure. And another factor is that professional development support is very high, very well designed and effective. And it's interesting that a lot of it comes from teachers working together. There's time in the school week for teachers to collaborate, and teachers routinely observe each other. In Shanghai, there's always an empty row of chairs at the back of the classroom because teachers expect to have someone come in and observe them. It could be from a different district, could be from someone else within their school, could be a supervisor, it could be a principal. But the expectation is that you will be constantly getting feedback on your practice and constantly working to support it, to improve it. And of course, Promotions and advancement in the system are based on performance, not just years of service and seniority. So in these systems, all of the incentives are aligned for highly professional, respected individuals to work their best and guide and work collaboratively. In conclusion, the supply chain for teachers in high-performing countries is one that starts with high-caliber inputs and carefully grooms and nurtures and supports them throughout their career. There's special streams for teachers to stay in the classroom their entire career and yet still be promoted and still be rewarded increasingly. There's special streams for teachers to become mentors and master teachers in specific disciplines. And there's a high priority on continuous collaboration and work together and giving each other feedback. The expectation is that you're excellent to start with, but you will keep working hard to improve. But the first stage is kind of crucial. You have to ask, what makes teaching so attractive? What makes a system have high school students competing for jobs as teachers, which is so different from the reality in many other countries? And it's this mix of incentives. And I think it's important to think about the incentives for teaching in a very comprehensive way. I mean, most of the time the discussion is about salaries and there's really not enough attention given to the fact that teaching is a knowledge profession. And knowledge workers in general like to be challenged intellectually, like to be rewarded for their work, like to be treated as professionals. And the fact that these countries have such selectivity into teaching really makes the professional incentives around teaching a very strong, this kind of top part of this graphic, a very strong source of attraction. It's interesting, in many of these countries, I'd say most of these countries, the salaries are not exceptionally high. There are other sectors of the economy where teachers smart people can get paid more, but the professional incentives are very attractive, and the accountability pressures are not heavy-handed, but they're effective. One of the things that collaborating with other teachers in your school does is it makes everyone aware of how everyone else is contributing, and it stimulates everyone to work together. If you have highly professional school leaders, they know how to go and observe teachers, give them feedback, and manage the teaching force within the school. So to reduce some of these variations within school teaching performance that we see in other countries. So the results: a high prestige profession, teachers improve, share, and diffuse their practice, and high student learning outcomes. So now, say you're a minister of education in a developing country. What teacher issues do you see? School systems with low learning outcomes generally suffer from some mix of these three problems. Teachers have weak content mastery, teachers have low accountability, high absence rates, and teachers have poor classroom management skills. The teacher supply chain in low-performing countries is almost the reverse of what we see in the high-performing countries. Teaching in many places is a last resort profession, where the high school graduates that can't get into any other field go into teaching. The pay incentives are not very attractive. The quality of teacher education is poor, and in many places it's continuing to decline. In many countries, it's becoming online-only courses and rapid degrees that really don't prepare teachers to be effective in the classroom. The school systems are under pressure to expand their schools and expand access to more students. So the standards for hiring are not very high. And even worse, sometimes, access being hired is sometimes a political decision. You're related to the teachers union, or you're related to a politician. Same thing for promotions to school directors. So at every step, this supply chain doesn't work the same way. And in low-performing countries, the incentives for professional excellence, the financial incentives might be relatively good. Actually, they are fairly good in many low-income countries. But the accountability pressures are weak because, worst case scenario, school directors are selected for political reasons, and they don't have the moral authority to expect attendance because they may be absent themselves. And the professional culture has just not been developed. But I want to come back to this phenomenon of big variations in teacher quality across and within schools. And so many places I've been, even in the worst performing schools, you see one or two teachers who are really doing an amazing job. And even in the most distressed school systems, you typically find teachers coming into it with strong intrinsic motivation. They want to help students. Even if it was their last academic resort, they really have the potential to be inspired by working with students and helping them learn. But very often they don't have the capacity to know how to help students learn, so they don't get that professional gratification. So to sum up these first two segments on an overview of teacher quality, the reality of most school systems is that there's large variation in teacher effectiveness, both across the system and within schools. And it's true whether you measure the effectiveness in terms of the efficiency of classroom practice or impacts on student test scores, or increasingly impacts on other dimensions of student development, which are showing similar ranges in teachers' impact on students' socio-emotional skills. Hanashek and Rivkin found that teachers' value-added learning gains could vary dramatically within the same grade in the same school. Chetty found that high-quality teachers could dramatically raise learning within a single school year, and found amazingly that 85% of the variation in teacher performance was within schools. So high-performing school systems ensure teacher effectiveness through three main strategies: selective recruitment, both into initial teacher education and at the point of hiring; career management, supporting teachers in their initial years of teaching and weeding out or helping low performers; and third, very high quality support and professional development. A lot of investment, a lot of expertise is embedded into teaching materials, into the curriculum, and into the textbooks. Even in Finland, which is famous for highly professional or autonomous teachers, it's very common to rely heavily on the textbooks because the textbooks are extremely well designed. But I would say of these three strategies, the first one, the selectivity into teaching, is the first among equals. So the animating questions for the next segments of this module on teachers is, what about systems locked in a low level of performance? What policies can raise teacher quality? How do you reform your system to recruit better teachers? How do you groom teachers more effectively? And what can you do to improve the incentives to motivate teacher performance? And then, very importantly, what is the political challenges around those kinds of teacher policy reforms? Thank you very much.